Hello and welcome to the Farming Today This Week podcast with me, Charlotte Smith. In this episode, the budget for the scheme which pays England's farmers for environmental work is revealed. But is it enough?
I have a budget which is finite. I'm doing my best to get as much value as possible out of the monies that we have been allocated so that I can do the best for farmers.
And how arable farmers see the year so far.
Very, very difficult. Obviously, all the input costs, fuel and fertilisers just kept going up and up and up. It's a massive risk to put winter crops in again.
More on all that later. First, Farm Able. It's a charity that connects ex-service people with life on a farm. The idea is to give military veterans a new purpose, skills and support. Well, Anna Jones has been to meet founder Penny Connaughton at Alecombe Farm in Devon to hear how it can transform lives, like veteran Keith Yelland, who was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder.
I was having, I suppose you would call it like nightmares. It all came back. And it was utterly, horrific. And what triggered it, I really have absolutely no idea whatsoever. But it was completely and utterly vivid. I then got my PTSD came into the fruition, and I was utterly confused as to what to do. I was in a surgery and picked up a magazine, and there was an article about this Farm Able. Made contact, met Penny. I realised that she was trying her best for service people to help them, and I've having been with Penny on a couple of her event days. The nice one was with the bees, which was completely and utterly fascinating. I know a couple of chaps that went there became beekeepers because, as I said, you can just sit there and look at these blessed little things, and then you think the struggle that little creature has to do just to fly from A to B. It takes you out of yourself.
That's a real theme that has come out today. Also, the Mark, the farmer here, also said there's something about losing yourself in a task that releases something and calms something in the mind. Yeah. Penny, you're no longer farming directly yourself, but now you've dedicated yourself to bringing ex-service people and veterans onto farms.
I think the correlation between the two is why it works. Trauma happens on the farm, as we know, TB, horrendous situations. So farmers are resilient, the same as veterans and service leavers are resilient. It's really satisfying, and I want to be there. If there's hiccups, they can still come back and say, hi, this is where I'm at now, and it's nice to see their progress. I would love to set up a small training centre, rural skills. I'm looking at a new team at the moment and with the right people to help me. So it's all about funding, that's the problem.
Penny Connaughton. You can hear more about Farm Able in tomorrow morning's On Your Farm. That's here on BBC Radio 4 at 6:35. Now, all this week on our sister programme, Farming Today, we've been talking about arable farming and cereal crops, things like wheat, barley, oats, because this week thousands of farmers braved the rain and the mud and flocked to the cereals event. It's an annual show aimed at arable farmers, which this year was held on Jeremy Clarkson's Diddley Squat Farm in the Cotswolds. Farmers are used to the challenges of the weather, but this year there have been several other parts to the tricky equation of making your cereal crop profitable. I started the day at a sprayer demonstration.
The sprayer you see is fitted with automated individual nozzle control. Give chemical at the nozzle right.
I am surrounded by massive tractors, huge bits of agricultural machinery, and even this year, drones. The most exciting thing that has happened here, to the delight of all the farmers and the horror, no doubt, of the organisers, is that it's rained. With me is Lou Bradshaw. Lou, how are you coping? Because the weather is not raining at the moment, but it's been pretty wet.
It has been pretty wet, you're absolutely right, Charlotte. But the show must go on, like we say. So obviously we have combated the weather. We've had some great support teams come in. People on power washers, on detailing, making the tractors look just as good, like they're brand new and not been dragged through a load of mud. So yeah, it's been fantastic. But we are dry right now and we are appreciating it.
For someone who's never been here before,
yes.
What's cereals all about?
So it's the UK's largest technical arable event. It is trade only, it is farmers only, and we're here basically to highlight all the innovation, all the agri-tech, all the automation that is available within the industry. We're forever moving, we're forever a fast-paced industry, and basically it's an opportunity for arable farmers to come together. We all know farming can be quite a lonely career choice. So to come together, network, learn something new, meet up with friends old and new, and just kind of really highlight what the industry is about at the moment.
Lou Bradshaw. Well, it has been something of a tricky year so far for arable farmers. Prices of energy and fertiliser are up, largely because of the conflict in the Middle East, but the prices they're paid for their crops are not. And we've had another very dry spring. So, how are farmers here feeling about it all?
It's been tough. Hopefully it's going to get a bit better now we've had a bit of rain. Looking forward to harvest. Hopefully some better prices.
Very, very difficult. Obviously, all the input costs, fuel and spray chemicals and fertilisers just kept going up and up and up.
Are you expecting to make money this year?
I wouldn't imagine we will.
What are you thinking about planting when it comes to autumn planting? Because some farmers are saying they might not bother.
I'm even thinking that. It's a massive risk to put winter crops in again.
Been a challenge. It's a drought regularly in the spring. Globalised market, so fertiliser, fuel, labour. I'm not 100% sure whether the smaller farmers in arable will continue because they just physically can't.
Some of the farmers here at Cereals. Well, the National Farmers Union has launched its fertiliser resilience plan here at the show. Their president is Tom Bradshaw.
Well, everything that's going on down in Iran and the Middle East is putting a real focus onto fertiliser. There's a real question mark whether UK farmers can afford to buy fertiliser at the price that it might be over the next year. So we're asking our government to make sure that UK farmers can continue to produce food for 70 million people.
Exactly what do you want them to do?
If the fertiliser price is above a trigger, then we've seen a lot of support coming out of EU countries and other countries around the world, Australia, America, above £500 a tonne for ammonium nitrate. We believe the government should help support the availability of that and the price of that product.
But fundamentally, you're asking taxpayers to help you buy fertiliser. It's a business decision, surely.
Well, it is a business decision, but it would also restrict food price inflation. There's a real danger globally. Half the calories are produced because of nitrogen fertiliser. If we don't have access to that product around the world, then the implications for global food production are very severe. That will have knock-on implications in the UK.
And what is it at the moment?
Ammonium nitrate today is just under £500 a tonne. Before the start of the conflict, it would have been well below £400 a tonne. So farmers are already absorbing a lot of cost increase here. We're carrying a lot of the risk. And we're saying to government we need to share that risk so we can continue to afford producing the country's food. We've
been talking to farmers here today, and obviously they acknowledge this is a very challenging year. If you don't get this help from the government, what do you think will happen?
I think there will be farmers and growers around the country that are taking decisions to produce less crops, to produce less food, because they cannot carry the risk. We don't have any support mechanisms from the UK government anymore. We have public money for public goods. We are incredibly exposed to a global market. We don't produce any fertiliser from raw ingredients here. And we have to look to the government now to say, how can we make sure that it's worth farmers taking the risk to continue producing food?
Are you over-egging this? Are you just scaremongering?
No, we're not over-egging it at all. I mean, we've seen, unfortunately, the grain markets haven't responded. So the price ratio between the value of the grain we're producing versus the fertiliser price is really out of kilter. With the Ukraine war, grain markets rose steeply, so it was still affordable. The danger today is that it's not affordable for UK growers, and then that creates an inflationary impact right the way through the food supply chain. So the government can help avoid some of that inflation by making sure we continue to produce here.
Tom Bradshaw there from the National Farmers Union. Well, there is a lot of talk about fertiliser costs here at Cereals this year, but also a lot of talk about how farmers can bring the general cost of growing a crop down. Now, I've made my way over to one of the trial plot areas. This, I suppose, is what makes this show so unique. Everywhere you look, there are little patches of crops, experimental crops, new varieties, and this is a really interesting experiment. So I'm in some wheat, and this first section, this has been treated with high input, so that's a lot of fungicide to keep the disease down. This middle one here, which is a little bit more gappy, this had a low input, and then the one on the end, which is extremely gappy, with a lot of dead leaves, hardly any green leaves on it at all. This is untreated with fungicide. Now, this is all part of an experiment organised by Ceres Rural. With me is their managing partner, Charlie Ireland, probably better known as Cheerful Charlie from Clarkson's Farm, the man who brings the bad news, generally speaking. Charlie, what was the idea behind this set of plots?
What we were trying to demonstrate is actually these are sort of like the diddly squat trials. So they're varieties that we have grown on the farm, particularly the milling varieties, which a lot of people know. But then we've added some feed varieties, which we don't necessarily grow here. And really, what we're trying to demonstrate is how the plant can help the farmer. Can you choose some varieties that are, require, they're lower risk because they basically require, potentially less inputs during the growing season. Why is that important? Well, the cost of growing these crops per hectare has just escalated year on year on year. We know fertiliser's gone up. You probably aren't going to save much fertiliser in these trials, but you could save sort of 50, 60, 70 pounds a hectare on fungicide inputs, which may pay for that extra fertiliser. So you could, if you're going to have to pay it in fertiliser, can you save it somewhere else in the growing programme?
Can you? Because we're looking at the crops in front of us, and there is quite a big difference between high input and untreated.
Yeah, and it demonstrates, depending on which variety you choose, you can see in a couple of them that the difference between a high input and an untreated is absolutely stark. The low input, you're probably not that happy with it for this variety, but if we move, to the next variety just behind it, actually that variety has fared much better. And that's what we're trying to demonstrate, is that actually some varieties have a natural resistance to some of those disease. They help the grower more, whereas other varieties are, might be higher yielding on paper, but that requires a lot higher input. Now it's the net margin we're more interested in than necessarily that the gross output.
Because it's not about yield, it's about profit.
Exactly. This is showing actually the bottom line, what is the most profitable way of growing these crops. And we've moved, because of the risk in growing, the amount of money you need to spend, can you reduce the risk on farm? There is no cushion anymore. The BPS is gone.
That's the basic payment scheme, the subsidy here in England.
So there is no subsidy anymore. So actually, what is the best strategy for a grower?
Charlie Ireland there. Well, given all that we've heard this morning, where does that leave arable farmers? I've got two in front of me. Let's get them to introduce themselves. Who are you?
James Peck, PX Farms, based just outside Cambridge.
And how much are you farming and what are you farming?
Just over 5,000 hectares. Combinable crops, so focused around milling wheat as a staple. Then we move on to oats and oilseed rape, mustard, peas, beans.
Also with us is Stephen Goodwin. Stephen, where and what are you farming?
I farm on the Northamptonshire-Oxfordshire border, just outside Banbury. Mixed farm, we're about 3,500 acres, 1,600 breeding ewes, suckler herd, 2,000 acres of arable.
We've heard a lot about fertiliser this morning and also about some of the other challenges facing you. How are you feeling, both of you, about this year's harvest? James?
I think we just had 78 mil of rain. We had 9 weeks of dry. And I'm effectively been farming now 25 years, so for me we're having periods where I've never seen before, so I don't actually know if it's saved us and we're actually going to do tremendously well, or actually the damage is already done. I'm forever optimistic, so I feel as if actually the rain may have just come at the right time. The grains are going to swell, be quite big and bold. We could actually end up with quite a good harvest in the end. I'm feeling optimistic, oddly, that it might even have a spike in prices.
What about for you? How are you feeling about harvest?
Well, actually, I'm also quite positive about harvest. We had a terrible harvest last year. It was so dry around our area, and yields down to half of what we were expecting on wheat and barley. But this year, everything is looking quite positive. All the winter crops looking well. Spring cropping, not so much so. But the livestock side of the business, we've got some lovely looking lambs. Everything is outside lambing, and they've come on beautifully this year, much better than last year.
And this is the big difference, I guess, between your two businesses, because you've introduced or reintroduced animals, livestock back in. And this is called regenerative farming by some people, and they hope that it will mean you can use less inputs, so less fertiliser, for instance, which, as we've discussed today, has become very expensive.
We're integrating the livestock over as much of the arable area as we can. And it's helping with fertility. We've reduced our diesel usage by direct drilling quite massively.
James, how's your fertiliser bill looking?
Well, I haven't bought next year's. Now, typically, I will have bought next year's at the end of May, and I haven't done it. So I am holding off, but I'm still planning to continue with the same level of cropping that I typically would do in a rotation, which would have the same level of quantity. I've got friends staying with me from Australia, Western Australia. They've had their rationing effectively of fertiliser, and they've had only been able to get hold of 70%, and 30% of their farm they've had to change their cropping because they haven't got any nitrogen.
And some people are arguing that actually for some farms you will be able to get round this. You could use a bit less, you can, as you say, change what you plant come the autumn, rather than just carry on the same old way, that actually farmers should learn from this and change.
I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's a simplistic way of doing it. I think that as you get a business that gets greater on scale, I think the ability to suddenly make those substantial changes are not so easy. But we are a rent-based business, so we have to still pay the rent.
Stephen, how are you thinking about autumn planting?
We will be putting wheat in, and we will still be putting oilseed rape in. Some of the more marginal land could be more grass in our case.
While the sun's shining like today and we had a bit of rain, suddenly I'm hoping, like all farmers, I think that come September things are in a very different place politically around the world, and we're all doing terribly well. And I'm surprised that you found two farmers together who actually seem optimistically excited. I mean, Steve almost looked like he smiled earlier.
Yeah, well, we're stood here on the regen stage, and it is great to see how many people there are here today, and there does seem quite a positive vibe. I think there is slightly more positivity in agriculture. People are slightly happier than they were this time last year.
Farmers Stephen Goodwin and James Peck there at Cereals earlier this week. Well, to coincide with that event, the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs revealed how much money it's making available to farmers in England through the Sustainable Farming Incentive, or SFI, for this year. This scheme has a bit of a troubled past. It is currently suspended after it ran out of money last year. It is the biggest public money for public goods scheme that pays farmers only for the work they do to protect and benefit the environment. There are elements of it which the government says will help support food production and improve productivity. Now, all this replaces the old EU payment, which paid farmers based on the amount of land they farmed, and has now been phased out in England from the end of this year, though it continues on in other parts of the UK, while Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland are introducing their own new schemes. Well, in England, the total budget for new SFI agreements will be £240 million. Up to £60 million of that is allocated to two specific groups. Small farms, that's those under 50 hectares, which is about 120-ish acres, and those farms not already in any existing environmental scheme. They will be able to apply from June the 30th in what DEFRA are calling Window 1, while the scheme opens to all other farmers and land managers in September, and that is, as you would expect, called Window 2. Martin Lines is a farmer and CEO of the Nature Friendly Farming Network. He told Kaz Graham that while he understands that government budgets are tight, this pot of money won't be enough.
I don't think it will be enough money, and that's something the government needs to look at. If there's clear ambition from farmers to deliver those public goods and build resilience into their farming system, could they find additional money, particularly the cost impacts to farmers during this crisis of war and fuel and fertiliser?
For many farmers, SFI will be the only farm support that they can access. How do you think the news of this SFI budget will be going down in the farming community?
And we've got to remember this is just in England as well. So other devolved nations have still got an area-based structure. So I think for many farmers, those that want to apply, it is difficult. It's a relatively small budget for the amount of farmers and the schemes that are finishing later this year to deliver the continued ambition that was happening there. But we also need to remember there's the higher tier. They're putting more funding into the higher tier countryside stewardship and then hopefully opening up the application window for more farmers. So SFI is just one part of a range of things that are in the ELM budget. So we've got to look at all of it, not just one part.
How much demand do you think there's likely to be for these 2 rounds of SFI applications?
I think there's going to be significant demand. I think the first window, many of those that haven't got an application will be keen to get in, and many of the small farms. But the second window, particularly now they're making the system work that people who've got a scheme that finishes at the end of this year or early next can pre-apply, there is going to be significant demand, and I think the budget will soon get used up.
Yeah, well, I wanted to ask, how confident are you that all of those farmers who want to apply for SFI and who do apply for it will actually be able to get onto this scheme?
I believe lots of farmers are going to want to apply. I think it's up to the government and particularly the Prime Minister and the Treasury to really look at if there's real demand to deliver these public goods that build resilience and long-term food security. How do they support those farmers to do it? In particularly in a time of when high input costs, poor returns, how do you support farmers? And they could step up and do that.
Martin Lyons there from the Nature Friendly Farming Network. Dame Angela Eagle is the Farming Minister, and Kaz put it to her that this budget is too low.
Well, remember there's 560 million already committed from previous agreements that's being spent in this financial year as well. So that 240 million is for new agreements. These agreements tend to last 3 years and be paid for at the end. And so it's a slightly more complex picture than that new money figure would suggest.
Demand for this scheme is likely to be really high. How are you going to manage applications? Is it going to be just first come, first serve? Because Tom Bradshaw, president of the NFU, has said it's going to be a bit of a bun fight, really, because so many people want to apply.
Well, first of all, we're going to open the scheme this month to small farmers. And by small, we mean those that farm on 50 hectares or less, or people that don't have a scheme. And we'll see how it goes. There's then a second window with the rest of the money, another 180 million for people to apply in September. So that's how it's going to go. We're going to be very open and transparent about how the money is being applied for and spent.
Because last year, SFI effectively ran out of money. It was closed to applications with no prior notice to farmers. How are you going to ensure that that doesn't happen again?
Well, look, the Secretary of State has been very clear that she doesn't want that to happen. We've said we'll be very transparent about how the money is being applied for and allocated as that's happening. And so it will be clear to see we won't just have a sudden overnight closure. We're not going to put farmers or ourselves in that position again.
Up until now, it hasn't been possible for farmers with land in existing stewardship agreements to apply for SFI, even if those existing agreements are about to run out. And that has meant that some farmers have missed out on entering SFI. You're hoping to change that this year, aren't you?
Yes, some of the constraints here have been the IT systems that we've inherited, which the Rural Payments Agency have to work with. And that's made it impossible up until now for people to be able to make bids for grants before their previous grant has run out. But we have done work with our IT providers, and we certainly hope that come the opening of the second window, that those with expiring agreements will be able to apply early for new schemes.
OK, I just want to ask you one last question, and that goes back to the money again. Lots of commentators are saying that £240 million is not going to be enough to fund all of the farmers who want to apply for the Sustainable Farming Incentive. What do you say to that? What is your answer to that?
I have a budget which is finite. This country has a 100% debt to GDP ratio at the moment and is paying billions upon billions in debt interest for the money it's had to borrow at the end of the crises we've been facing. There are constraints in life. I'm doing my best to get as much value as possible out of the monies that we have been allocated in the comprehensive spending review so that I can do the best for farmers.
The Farming Minister, Dame Angela Eagle. Now, before we go, a very quick reminder that time is running out to make a nomination for the BBC Food and Farming Awards. Each year, as I'm sure you know, we celebrate those making the country better through food. And I am once again judging the Archers and Farming Today Farming for the Future Award, alongside Mally Harris, who plays Natasha Archer. We are looking for innovative, forward-thinking individuals and organisations shaping a more sustainable future future for farming. You can nominate yourselves, but if you know somebody who you think we should be looking at, please go to bbc.co.uk/food awards, where you'll also find the full terms and conditions and the privacy notice. And get a move on, because entries close on Monday, that's the 15th of June, at midday. That's it from us. I'm Charlotte Smith. The producer was Beatrice Fenton, and Farming Today this week is a BBC Audio Bristol production.